Start. Uh, First of all, thank y'all for popping in or watching later, as some of you have messaged me and said you will. Just to give you a little bit intro about me, if you haven't read uh, any of my um, any of my Grit and Wit, my name is Maury Wood. I have been on Grit and Wit for it was a year in April. I have written in the past. A lot of people always ask, like, when did you start writing? I was actually a newspaper reporter back in the early 2000s for about 4 years, and then I taught English in a for a sixth graders. So I've been writing for, I guess, 26 years now, which is hard to believe. I've done a lot of freelance work with Christian publications. I've also, hi Scott. I've done a lot of writing with I'm trying to think of some. Open Windows was I wrote for them a little while. I've written devotionals for my church to go with sermon series. I really like writing. It's writing is a lot easier than doing these videos. But I had a podcast for a while, but it was just doing a podcast regularly is hard. Sitting and writing something, I just feel like it's a little bit easier. But where this came from, I publish Grit and Wit every Tuesday. My articles release every Tuesday at 7:30 in the morning. I to any advice I would give anybody like that's trying Substack or whatnot, I would say consistency. I told myself when I started, and I told my wife to hold me accountable, I was going to release at least one article a week. When I first started, I was like, I couldn't stop writing. I had I had articles written until December, and then I started writing a little bit of other stuff, and it's really cool how God works, because when I first started Grit and Wit, it was more, I wanted it to be marriage and fatherhood related, and I not saying I didn't want it to be faith based, but I think I wrote a faith based piece one week, and it was very popular. And then I prayed about it, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to go full blown faith based. So I still try to be funny and sprinkle some humor and some real life things in. But I mean, honestly, if you're a Christian, I feel like God's going to be in the middle of whatever you're doing. Where this came from, I thought about it, and I was thinking, I put a post out. My brother suggested that I do Facebook Reels. And if you have done Facebook Reels, they're really fun to do, but then you get the analytics and they make you feel awful, because you pour your heart out on a video, and then you get the average back and it says uh like, people watched this for 5 seconds and then clicked off of it. So that was kind of discouraging, but it is what it is. With this, I was like, well, I'll just put this video out. Substack has been very encouraging, and I love the community here. They've been super supportive. I've met a lot of great people, so that's why I'm doing this. But Mark Osborne, who does the Valiant Forge podcast, he reached out to me a few weeks ago about appearing on his podcast, and I really like. I don't want it to sound bad. I like talking. I like talking about my faith, and I like telling stories. Obviously, I'm a writer, but I like doing it person to person. This is kind of odd, because I'm like talking to I'm talking to. There's nobody here except our dog, and she's laying on the couch with her eyes shut, so she doesn't care. But I told myself I was going to talk to y'all like I was talking to my best friend Mateo. So that's what I'm doing. But Mark Osborne, once again with the Valiant Forge, give him a plug. He asked me on Substack what my biggest struggle what was my biggest struggle as a Christian husband and father. And that was a really, really great question. Just to give you a little bit more background, my wife and I have been together for 26 years. We dated for 6 years. Her parents wanted her to finish college, and I was like, well, okay. So she finished college, and we got married in 2006. We had our first son in 2008, and then we had three more kids. So we have four. We were kind of thinking two kids. Uh, if you'd have told 19-year-old me you're going to have four kids, I'd have said you're out of your mind. But that's life, and that's, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we wouldn't have it any other way. We have boys on the bookends and girls in the middle. So to tell you, I tell you that to say, my biggest struggles as a Christian father is, I think, being present. And I have worked really hard on that with in the last few years. I grew up in a home where a lot of times my father would have a bad day at work, and he would sometimes bring those bad days home. Uh, and he was just in a bad mood. And at that point, I was like, when I grow up and get married and have kids, if I have a bad day, I'm going to keep the bad day at work. And I've tried my best to do that, or at least I've called ahead and warned my wife, hey, today was not a great day. And she's always takes really good care of me. But with being present, I think it goes down to, you can't let your kids think that something else is more important, such as with this live. I My son is 17. He's two houses down mowing the neighbor's yard, and he told me good luck. I helped him get all the stuff down there, but he told me good luck before I came on here. And I told my wife, who is outside, I said, if he needs help, come get me, and I can stop this live and restart it, because I think it would be ironic if I'm doing a live chat on parenting and I essentially go, this is more important than helping you with whatever your issue is. So I think that's one, is the challenge of making your kids feel like they don't come in second place to something that they shouldn't. They do know they come in second place to my wife. We've made that God, wife, and then the kids. Because I think a lot of times in marriages, the kids, I'm not saying that the kids should not be high priorities, but I think a lot of times when the kids come, the spouses kind of, I don't want to say put their marriage on the back burner, but they don't, what would I say? Don't work. I don't want to say don't, I don't even want to say don't work on it that well. Don't, don't, don't be intentional, I guess you could say. Cause sometimes it's easy to go, well, we've been married for 20 years. We'll be okay. And my wife and I are still, our marriage is still growing and getting better. And it's a blessing to be able to say, truly, I'm married to my best friend. But I think one example, story time. One example is, I like asking my kids questions. If you've never just asked your kids questions in the car, I'm one of these people that if I go to Lowe's or something, I will ask one of the kids, hey, does anybody want to go to Lowe's with me? And one of them always does, because they know if they go with me, we usually stop and get a drink or something at a store just as a little treat. Or we always split something. That's the way we get around not eating a lot of candy. We'll split our favorite candy bar or something. But the other day, we were going to Lowe's, and on the way to Lowe's, I asked my 8-year-old, I said, what is something I do good as a dad? Because I was actually, hi, Anthony. I was actually trying to get some information for this live. And he said, I don't really know. He said, you take care of us. And he said, you take care of us, you feed us, and you do fun things. So I was like, okay, that's pretty good for 8-year-old answer. So we went to Lowe's. We went to, I don't remember. I think we went to Walmart too. So when we were there, I bought a sun drop. If you do not know what sun drop is when we get to heaven, there will be sun drop machines everywhere. It'll probably kill you if you drink I don't know. I used to drink one a day and I'm okay, but Karen made me stop drinking them because they're not really good for your kidneys. But they taste really good though. A really cold one, like if you get a glass bottle and put it in the freezer for about 20 minutes and let it get all icy and slushy and eat it with a pizza, it's like Southern delicacy. But I bought a sun drop because I'm trying to stop and I hadn't had one in a while. But on the way home, we don't usually let the kids drink Sundrop because it's like Mountain Dew on steroids. And my 8 year old Grayson doesn't need any more energy. And on the way home, I I drank like half of the Sundrop and I put the top back on it and I reached behind me in the seat and I said, "Here, you can have the rest of this." And he said, "Bet," because that's his new thing to say. So he drank that, and uh, in the middle of drinking it, he said, "Do you remember when I said a while ago the fun things you do?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "This is one of those fun things." So I'm saying that because to me, I just gave him a rest of my sun drop as a little treat. But to him, I'm hoping it's a memory. And like I've talked to my older kids and things that I don't really see as that big of a deal, they talk about like all the time, just little things that they felt like, okay, daddy cared about us in that moment and we were the most important thing. I think that's super important. Just I don't like saying, wait a minute, because I think a lot of times uh, that becomes a problem. If you're sitting on the couch, and I know men and women, you come home from work, or even I work from home a lot most of the time, and I need some time to decompress or whatever. And my kids kind of know I need about 20 minutes, but it's neat because once again, my 8 year old, who's like my mini me, he'll run up and go, "Are you off?" And I'll say, "Yeah, I'm off." And then he's happy. We can go do something. But I think a lot of times my kids in the past have said, uh, what, like, "Hey, can we go? Can you come outside and throw football with me?" Or, "Hey, can we go walk around the block?" My daughters like doing that. They'll say, "Hey, can we go walk around the block?" And in the past, I've said, "In a minute." And one time, one of the kids said, "That's what you always say." And I was like, "Yeah, I do say that a lot." So from that point forward, I have tried my best. If I'm able to walk away from whatever it is I'm doing, I will say, "Okay, let's go do it." Um, like throwing football or taking a lap around the block or stuff like that. So I think once again, being present with your kids and showing them the time is valuable with them. My 17-year-old is a senior this year. I mean, he we do not have that many more years of him in the house. And as heartbreaking as that is, I don't want to say it's more heartbreaking for my wife, but I have a different feeling. Like I'm kind of excited to see he's already turning into a great young man. I'm kind of excited to see what he's gonna be, I guess. And that might be the difference between a father and a mother. I don't know. We always say in our house, I'm the chiseler. Like in our house, if our kids need something, I'm the one that gives them the hard truth. Like, "Hey, maybe you don't need to use that tone," or, "Hey, maybe you don't need to, maybe you need to do something else." And my wife is the polisher. She's the one that comes up gently and says, "Hey, why don't we try to blah?" So I mean, we have different roles because I hate to say good cop, bad cop, but you parents out there, you know sometimes you have to be a good cop and bad cop. Um, Another thing that I think is kind of a big struggle for me as a not only a father but a husband is being the calm in the chaos. I think that is difficult. I don't want to say it's difficult, but it's heavy. It's a heavy burden. I'll say that. When things are going sideways, we have in Tennessee, we have tornado season, and it seems like it's when it's tornado season, we'll get weather alerts. And now that everybody has smartphones and stuff, the phones are buzzing like crazy. And the younger kids are like, "What's wrong? What's wrong? Are we having a tornado?" And I'll be like, "No." And then the siren goes off, and you're like, "Okay, maybe we are." But there was one good example. I had taught my oldest to kind of my wife and I went on a trip out of the country about 2 years ago. And before we left, I sat down with at the time, my 16-year-old, and I said, "Okay, you're the man of the house. So if stuff goes sideways," and I gave him some scenarios, and I said, "If stuff goes sideways, here's what we need to do. You need to do this. You need to do this." I said, "On the outside chance that there's a storm, we're going to go ahead and clean the closet out. Here are the helmets. Here's the flashlights. But I don't think anything's going to happen. And he was like, okay, thanks. Well, lo and behold, we had while we were actually in Ireland, and our phones, it was a I mean huge time difference, but there was like a huge line of storms that came through our area in Middle Tennessee. It was just one line. I mean, one line would come through, and then there was another one right behind it. I mean, it was literally, they canceled school the next day simply because children had been up all night with the storms. But with that being said, my son called me after we found out and everything. I called and talked to him, and he said, I tried my best to remain calm, but I was scared. And I said, welcome to fatherhood. Because I said, I'm scared a lot. I just don't let y'all see it. Because I think that is an awesome burden as a father and a husband, to remain calm in situations. I don't know if any of you dads are like me. I had a friendly fuss. We went out on a double date with some friends of ours from church, and we went to a restaurant, and I always sit in the chair facing the exit so I can see everything, because I was raised situational awareness. And he actually said, you're in my seat. And I said, nope. I said, this is mine. I said, I can't sit anywhere else. And he said, you got to watch the exits, don't you? And I said, yes, I do. And I mean, that's just the way it is. Even when we go to a restaurant, my kids will go, that's daddy's seat. Don't sit in it. Because they know but what's awesome is they're not sitting in it, but they already know, okay, daddy's got to watch out for us. So that makes me feel good. And I think I've used it before, but one of the things I always think about is be a thermostat and not a thermometer. A thermostat in your home controls the temperature. Right now, my house is set at 74 degrees. Some people say I'm crazy. I grew up in a farmhouse that had window air conditioning units, and we had to shut doors in the afternoon to turn the air on. And I slept with a window open and sheets because it was so stinking hot. So I am perfectly fine with 74 degrees in every room, and I like that. But the thermostat sets the temperature for the whole house. The only way it gets nothing affects it except for one of us going up and touching the buttons. A thermometer is affected by its environment. It changes according to what's around it. As a Christian husband and a Christian father, I feel it's necessary to influence the environment. I try my best to point the family to God. I want them to see me reading my Bible. I want them to see me taking notes in church. I want them to see me volunteering. If I am asked to help out at church, the answer is usually yes, unless something is not allowing me to. I teach 2 life groups. I drive golf carts after our last service on Sundays to take people to their cars. My oldest, since he's old enough, he will drive golf carts sometimes. So I think being the influence in the environment is a big deal, because I always say, I wrote about it one time. I think I said, I want next to Jesus's voice in their head, I want my voice to be their head saying, maybe we don't need to do this, or maybe this is not a good idea, or maybe this is a great idea. That would be another thing too. I try to cheer them on when they do great, instead of just always telling them, hey, that wasn't a good idea. If they do something great, tell them. My wife and I think one of the things we do in our marriage, we've done really well in the last, I'd say 6 or 7 years, because every time my kid, anyway, I have teenagers. If you have kids, 6, 7, I can't stand. Anyway, in the past few years, when we have conversations, we will either assume both of us are coming from a place of goodwill, or we'll even say, I'm coming from a place of goodwill with this. Um, because a lot of times I think things are said that are misconstrued. We did a Bible study one time called Love and Respect. And the guy, Roland Emmerich, I think is the author, he talked about how guys have blue ears and girls have pink ears and they hear differently. Great example of this. My wife, my son came home from work tonight, and we told him, you can go to church. They're having a youth thing at church. You can go to church or you can just come home. Well, he didn't tell us either way. And he just showed up. And my wife, when he came in, my wife said, I could have heated your supper up if I'd have known you were coming. Nothing wrong with that. But I told her after they were all done, I said, some men could have heard you should have texted me or called me and told me you were coming home. In that book, in Love and Respect, it also talked about like when for some, this is just, it was always for some, like when you're driving through your neighborhood, and this has happened to me. Hi, Lisa. When you're driving through your neighborhood and your wife sees a house and says, oh my gosh, look at their yard. It's gorgeous. A husband might hear, that yard's better than yours. Or why don't you make our yard look like that? And the wife didn't mean anything by it. The wife was just saying, that's a pretty yard. Or we can flip it. There was another example in the book that a couple went to someone's house, that when they left, the husband said, oh my gosh, that was an awesome dinner. He didn't mean anything by it, but the wife heard, she's a better cook than me. Is that what you think? And I know it's easy to laugh at those things, but when we hear, our ears hear things different. And sometimes I wrote about this past Tuesday, when your imagination is a 10 and it's filling in the blanks. Like when we get scared about stuff, and instead of leaning into common sense, for lack of a better word, we start filling the blanks in when we're scared, instead of taking a step back and looking at the whole picture and being like, okay, we need to take a breath. Really quick, the story in Tuesday's blog was when Brighton was, we had one kid. Somebody asked me, this is a great segue. Somebody asked, they read an article, and I do not by any means think I'm an expert or whatnot. I mean, I have 4 kids. I'm not an amateur, but we have 4 kids, and all 4 of them have very distinct personalities. And God thought it would be funny to make the youngest one just like me. So that makes some good conversations. But a dad commented and said, it would be neat to see how you would write if you had been writing when you were inexperienced. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to write a story about that. So I wrote a story this past Tuesday about a time we were at a store. We'd been doing some errands. Brighton was in a car seat. He was like 3 or 4. He was little. And he said his leg kept itching. Well, we were like, we're fixing to go home. We'll be fine. So he kept saying it kept getting worse and worse. So I stopped and looked at his leg. And on his side of his leg was this dark red circle with a blue circle that looked like, for lack of it looked like rotting. It looked like necrotic tissue, like it was a wound. And then it was red around that. So I told Karen, I was like, okay, something might be bad. I don't know. Once again, we got 1 kid. The oldest kid is the practice kid. Y'all know that. So we looked through our contacts. We called a nurse friend of ours, and she was trying to talk us off the ledge. And she was like, oh, it's probably nothing. Don't worry about it. She said, send me a picture of it. And if you've got a coin, put it next to it so I can see how big it is. Well, the only coin we could find quickly was a penny, which was good because that's how big the wound was. So we put a penny next to this thing, and she calls us back and says, y'all might need to take it into the emergency room. So of course we start freaking out. We didn't even think. I was like a NASCAR driver. I got on I-65 and drove north to Franklin, to Williamson Medical Center. We walked in, we talked to the admitting person at the ER, and she was like, look, if this is bad, we're going to send him to Vanderbilt. So then me and Karen were sitting there going, okay, do we go and take him to Vanderbilt? All this time, mind you, Brighton is fine. He's just itching. That's it. He is not crying. He is not running a fever. He's fine. His parents are losing their mind, but he's just looking at us like, what are y'all, can we just go home? So anyway, we go, I say, why don't we just go find a clinic, a Minute clinic, and run in? So we ran into the Minute clinic. Doctor walks in, super calm, rolls up Brighton's leg. He goes, And I'm like wanting to freak out, like justify this, like this is bad, isn't it? He gets out a little cloth, puts some lotion on it, wipes his leg down, and the blue stuff disappears. And it's ringworm. The blue stuff was the denim from his blue jeans where he had been itching. Gave him a lotion and sent us home. That was like 5.5 hours of craziness. And he had ringworm. I was not calm in the chaos at that moment. Me and Karen both were like, okay. And now if somebody falls or something, we're like, okay, you're fine, hop up and stuff like that, which that happens anyway. So with that being said, I wanted to keep this first one a little bit, I don't want to say short, but I didn't want to go longer because I will be honest, if I have notes, because if I don't have notes, I will just sit here and ramble and chase rabbits. And Karen is not sitting next to me to rub a circle on my leg, because that's what she does when I'm teaching Sunday school when I am talking too much. So I didn't want to do that. So for the last like 5 minutes, I wanted to get out of here at like 8:05. Plus, like I said, my kids are fixing to go to bed and I want to be present. So just before we go, does anybody like have any questions or comments or anything like that? I think next week, if I do this again, I think next week I've had a lot of people message me about I've self-published 2 books, and I've self-published 1 book in January, and I self-published another book on Father's Day. And a lot of people have reached out to like for the process of that and how I did it and things like that. So I might talk about that next week. So, but if you have any questions, or if you can think of something, or frankly, if you think of something that you would like to see on Substack as a live, I would be more than happy to do it. So thank y'all so much. I would like to do this every Thursday night if possible. And I guess I will only leave you one thing. Our motto in our house is you can only control yourself. So that is what I will leave with you. You can only control yourself, and try to be the calm in the chaos in your households. Thanks a lot.